Okay, good evening. This is the Lake Mills Police and Fire Commission. It's Thursday, November 16th. That's the call to order. Roll call. Let the minutes reflect that all commissioners are present. We have minutes from the September 21st meeting, and those have been provided to everyone. Any corrections, additions, subtractions? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the minutes as presented?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. We have two items under Police Chief. First is the introduction of our new part-time officer, Mitch Bruss, who was not here at the last meeting. So, Mitch, Chief, you want to introduce us, tell us something about Mitch?
Absolutely. Mitch, Officer Bruss, we swore him in on October 3rd. He is working for the Jefferson City Police Department part-time as an officer. He's also an EMT. He's worked as a volunteer firefighter for Fort Atkinson and the town of Hull, which is in Stevens Point. Mitch also attended UW Stevens Point for general education and graduated from Waukesha Technical College Police Recruit Academy. He is currently in our field training program, is progressing quite well, and so we just wanted to bring him up here and give the commissioners a chance to meet him. Mitch?
Very good. Mitch, do you have anything to say or add to that?
I'd just like to thank everyone for allowing me this opportunity. I hope to learn a lot at Lake Mills, and I'm looking forward to my experience here, so I appreciate it very much.
And we appreciate your willingness to serve with the department, and on behalf of the commissioners and probably the whole city of Lake Mills, we welcome you, and we are very pleased to have you on board. Okay. Any questions for Mitch? You come from a law enforcement family, is that correct?
I do, yes.
Your father was police chief?
Yep, in Fort Atkinson, he was the chief of police.
Okay. Is he retired?
Yeah, he's retired now.
Okay.
He does real estate now.
Very good.
I got one question. Mitch, what's your EMT level?
Just EMT basic.
Okay.
I've never worked for a service, but I did go through the training, so I am a licensed EMT.
In Wisconsin, right? Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Very good. Thank you for coming to the meeting and introducing yourself. Okay.
Chief, once we get done here, can I get all that information from you? Again, that was a lot of information you covered, for the minutes.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, sounds good,
Yes.
thanks.
Okay. Also under the police chief, and you should have received a tentative timetable for hiring a new officer. Do you want to explain how this transpired, Chief? And give us
Yes.
a little-
Yeah, as of, the timetable that you do have is missing this section of the resignation. I mean, it does mention it, but it does not give a date. Actually, we had Officer Jared Fish, who was a full-time officer. He resigned on October 13th, 2017. He's accepted a position with the Milton Police Department. So that obviously created a vacancy for us in the, with our full-time officers. So we have posted to fill that vacancy already, and it is due to, I guess, the expiration period for resumes and applications is going to be November 11th or 24th, November 24th. And from there, this timeline would come into play tentatively on how we plan to move forward with the hiring process of a replacement for Officer Fish.
Okay. Thank you. I did have one request of the chief, and that would be our interview date. It's under PFC special meeting interview. Tentatively, it's set for January 26th. And that's a Friday, which I wasn't too pleased about. And then hoping that we could push this into February, wondering if everybody could meet on Monday, February 5th. And that would be our interview date. I assume we would probably start around 5 o'clock.
I think 5 o'clock would be best if that works for all the commissioners.
So if we could establish that date, does anybody have a problem with it?
Well, still trying to get my...
Try to get it up. Yeah, I know, it's a couple months in advance, but hopefully picking a date in February, we can be first on your
So
calendar.
February 5th, you said?
February 5th, it's a Monday.
Not a problem with me.
So unfortunately, that might skew the timetable somewhat, but maybe we can make up some time after that interview.
Exactly, and this timetable is tentative, as they usually are, and we anticipate that there may be, we have to have some flexibility in there regarding some of the appointments in the process, which is
Right.
kind of long and drawn out. So this really isn't going to create too much of a problem with changing that date on the PFC interviews. We'll continue to move forward, and we're shooting for the goal of having a solo patrol by July 1st on the street.
Sounds good. And we won't hold you to any of these dates because we know that you need flexibility.
Thank you. Absolutely.
Any comments on this?
I do have a question, Chief, as far as on, where it's just underneath where it says PFC interview, it says chief final interview, conditional offer. The chief interview, what's that? You don't mind me asking, what is that?
Yeah, the chief interview, typically what we do is we run 3 interviews. We run an initial interview, which usually has the sergeant and the captain.
Okay,
And from there, we do the PFC interview.
okay,
And at that particular point, then dependent upon selection from PFC, then we'll move to a chief's interview, which is typically consists of me and Captain Selk. It's a command staff interview to narrow it down if we need to just make sure that we have all bases covered and that we feel comfortable, that the command staff feels comfortable with where we're going with the hiring process or the offer to that individual. And then after that, we would do a conditional offer, which would be, of course, dependent upon the candidate passing the psychological, the medical physical, the urinalysis, and the background investigation, and we move on from there.
so then when we do the interviews, the candidate that we pick, that's not the final candidate that we're going with then? Is that, just get some clarification. When you say the chief's interview, I'm just curious.
Well, let me, taking a look at this, I see what you're saying. Yeah, it looks to me like that should actually be flipped around.
Okay,
Yeah, I apologize for that, because I think the way we've done it in the past is that we have done a command staff interview. Oh wait, no, I take that back. It looks like that is in place here. We have the supervisor interview with the captain and the sergeant, and then we do have the command staff interview, and then we go to police and fire commission. I guess the chief's, my mistake, the chief's final interview would be dependent upon me if I feel that there's any sort of need to go back and talk, meet with that individual if any questions should arise during the PFC interview.
gotcha.
I got that mixed up with the command staff interview. You're correct, that
Okay.
command staff does take place first, and we narrow that down, and the people that we do send to PFC would be individuals that, as I said in the past, we are not going to send anybody in front of PFC that we do not feel would make a good officer, a good fit for the department, a good fit for the community. You get, obviously, your opinion is very valuable in this decision-making process, and this is a step that we haven't really done in the past, and that's why it's kind of thrown me for a loop. But if there is some further questions that I may have after the Police and Fire Commission, after your interview with the candidate, then I may opt to sit down with that individual and just get some clarification on some of that stuff. But really, the way this has been set up in the past and the way that we'll probably continue in this particular matter is the final say is lying with the Police and Fire Commission, because I'm not going to send anybody to you
Right.
that I would not, that I do not feel would be a good officer here.
So, I hope you guys don't mind me asking, so then let's just say we pick a candidate and you do have some questions for the candidate and some red flags come up and you turn around and it's like, this ain't gonna work. What's the next step? Then we go back to interviewing again, or you just go to the next officer we picked as far as how do we?
Yeah, and since I do sit in on the PFC interviews, if there is any sort of questions that do arise, I'll be right there where we'll be able to discuss that.
Oh, okay.
And, taking a look at this, I'm not sure, with that being placed in there, I don't remember that being in there before, and I'm not quite certain why it's in there. The only reason I can speculate is if I did have some questions
Okay.
after the PFC interview that I wanted to meet with that individual again. However, the way we've done it in the past is that after the PFC, during the PFC interviews, if we have any questions or concerns, or PFC does, I'm right there. We can address those, and we can kind of move forward from there. So this particular step in the timeline really is unnecessary. I could probably actually even remove that from there.
Chief, wasn't that meeting so that we could give the conditional? It was a meeting with you and that person, and then the conditional offer was given after I think that's what that timetable was.
Well, we're now also working with, and that may have been why that was initially put in there, but we're now working more hand in hand with the HR department, with Misty and with Dan Drescher, the city attorney. And so the conditional offer is going to be drafted by them anyway. So after the Police and Fire Commission interviews, what I would probably be doing is contacting the HR department and letting them know who the final decision is, and they would draft the conditional offer and present that conditional offer to that candidate.
Are you satisfied with the interest?
At this particular point, law enforcement is seeing a lot of problems across the board. In fact, Commissioner Wers can probably attest to that as well. We have, as of right now, we have 11 candidates, whereas in the past, that have applied, we have a week left of this process being open. In the past, we would typically get about 80 interested applicants. It's just not a popular time for law enforcement with what's going on, that I'm sure most people are aware of, that watch the news on a daily basis. And my colleagues are seeing the same examples, the same crunch across the board. It's a difficult time for us, and we are very, I'm still adamant to that. I'm not going to lower the bar to hire an individual to police in this community just simply to fill a void in our, I guess in our department population. I am dead set on making sure we get the right candidate, the right fit for the department, the right fit for the community, and that's where we have to be. I guess we have to be open to the fact that with this timeline, as much as we'd like to go ahead and fill that position as quickly as we can, we need to make sure that we are getting the right person hired. Otherwise, if we go through this particular process and I don't feel that we have an individual that would do well with the department and with the community, I'll go ahead and I'll scrap the process and we'll start it all over again until we do find somebody. It's just there's too much at stake to just settle for a mediocre individual just simply to fill that void. We need good officers. We have a great department with good officers, and that's the way we're going to continue to operate.
That's a big draw.
I think
It's a huge
the
drop.
commissioners respect that philosophy, and we would appreciate that too. So thank you for that.
Do we have to approve this conditional offer then too? Is that something,
Yes,
so is that something we can do that night too on the 5th then to help you guys speed things along or not? Or doesn't it matter too much?
I'm sorry, with the,
With the conditional offer that Misty and Dan are writing, is that something that has to come back to us for approval or?
no.
Okay.
With the conditional offer, I think we'll have an agreement amongst us, or the Police and Fire Commission. Since I will be in on those, I'm just an observer. However, we will have discussions. There'll be closed door discussions after the PFC interviews, and you let me know who you're most interested in, and from there, I will let HR know, and we'll move in that direction.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure we could keep your timetable as
Right.
tight as possible too there.
Thank you.
And if something were to fall apart at the conditional offer stage, you would come back to us, and then we would look at the other candidates that we interviewed or start the process over.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
So, Chief, if you don't mind me asking, being you said like 11 candidates have already applied, what would you think would be a good number as far as for us to interview? I mean, do you think it's possible we could get 5 candidates, or is that pushing as far as for the commission to interview? I mean, I don't want to be interviewing just one candidate. Is there possible we
Right.
could get 5 or 3?
And that's a fair question, but it's hard for me to make that determination at this point without seeing the candidates, the quality of the people. It's not unrealistic to think that potential may exist.
Okay.
I'm somewhat pessimistic that it will, but normally considering the pool of candidates that we have to select from. So if there are, the main things that I'm looking for when we're going through the interviews are, two of the biggest things are that I look for a good fit for the organization and a good fit for the community, with the understanding that they bring all the other qualifications, intelligence and physical fitness and that sort of stuff that we through our hiring process we're able to determine through written tests and physical fitness, physical agility tests, and so on and so forth. What I look at is that fit. I like A and B level people that are a good fit for the organization, good fit for the community, and if I come up with I guess 2 or 5, that's the number that I would send up to PFC. If somebody just is not meeting that criteria, I am not going to waste the PFC's time in sending somebody up that I do not feel would meet that criteria and be a good police officer for the city of Lake Mills.
Any other questions for the chief regarding the timetable?
No?
Okay. Can I have a motion to approve the timetable as adjusted, with the understanding that we need flexibility in this? So
I'll move for that.
we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Do we have to accept the resignation of Jared too?
It's not.
Well,
I-
that's a question for Dan, and he's not here, but
He's not here.
why don't we cover our bases by, if you want to make that motion,
I'll make that
Russ?
motion. I think because we did it in the past with,
Okay.
We did do it in the past, yeah.
Thank you for calling attention to that. We have a motion to accept the resignation of Officer Jared Fish. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries.
You were the first.
Terry.
Terry
Yes.
seconded.
Yeah.
You made a motion.
It's Russ.
Russ did, okay.
Okay.
Russ did, okay.
Before we adjourn, I just wanted to discuss future meetings and agenda items. Since I haven't noticed that on the agenda, I'm somewhat reluctant to get into this. But we will talk about, the December meeting is to be determined. At this time, I don't know if we'll have one. We will definitely meet in January on our regular meeting day, and that will be a closed session.
January, or you mean February?
Well, we will be meeting in January, yes, at our regular meeting date. That'll be a closed session. At some point next year, I wanted to review our policies and procedures. If we have to go through that line by line, we will. So at some point, we will notice that and then have discussions on the policies and procedures. So if you have time, please feel free to look them over. Be prepared with suggestions, anything. My goal is to make sure that what's written in the policy is what we're practicing day to day. So that's about it. Anything else? Motion to adjourn. I'll move. Do we adjourn?
Second that one.